You haven't accidentally skipped to the end of the series, missing out all the renovation and development work on the boat, only to see me swanning around at sea in the finished product. What you are about to see, though, is my lifeboat Alan tootling along a creek, doing a quick circuit in the Thames estuary before sedately heading back to the boatyard again. There's a pretty good reason for this, and why I decided that before practically all of the major building and installation work, Alan needed to head out onto the water. He needed a float test. Although we had sourced a pretty much brand new lifeboat with nothing more than a few storage scratches and a handful of hours of engine running time, it was vital to reassure ourselves of the basics. If his engine or drivetrain was faulty, we needed to know. The gearbox and propeller assembly was also still untested. If there was a major leak, we definitely needed to know that as well. On top of that, I had zero experience on the water in one of these TELBs, and wanted to get a feel for his behaviour and handling before making big decisions. Boatyard staff at Dauntless quickly slung Alan into the creek, and we only had a few hours to set off and complete our circuit before the tides turned the creek back into a mud pit. We weren't let down. Granted, it was a calm autumn evening on a very sheltered corner of the English coastline, but we weren't ambushed with any major surprises. We kept an eye on the temperature of the oil-lubricated stern gland, as our temperature gun warned us that heat was building up. It later settled within its normal operating window though, so fear of a gland failure and intake of water was over. These lifeboats are not built for speed, and cruise at 5 or 6 knots. We tracked our speed using a GPS linked to our mapping software, and found that once at that speed, any increase in engine revs just churned up more water in our wake. Short of rethinking what propeller we use, we had to accept this as our top speed, and planned a later fuel economy test on a full sea trial. Until then, we settled on an amateur method of gradually reducing the engine speed until we found our speed dropping below 6 knots. That should very roughly hone us in on a sweet spot to avoid burning too much diesel. On an expedition where you need to travel thousands of miles without refueling, this will be crucial and worth a serious dedicated experiment in later months of sea trials. So we checked everywhere for leaks, the bilges, under the false floor that was nearing completion, and especially around a couple of zones at the bow and stern. We'd unbolted and removed huge galvanised steel structures that meant the boat could be winched into the sea from a boat or rig in an emergency. They were dead weight for us, and so we sealed in the blanks with 5200 to fill the gaps. So it was reassuring that they seemed robust and watertight. One thing I did notice was a dramatic roll on the boat. This was expected, as it was totally stripped out, far below even its minimum design weight. I'm guessing barely more than 2 tons, when it was rated to operate safely with around 6 times that. It meant we were sat very high in the water, and we knew anyhow the near total lack of a keel would be a challenge to sea handling, and therefore for Alan's crew keeping their breakfast down and not decorating the inside of the boat. Just walking from one side of the interior to the other made Alan rock quite noticeably. We knew once loaded with thousands of litres of fuel, months of supplies and plenty of equipment, we'd weigh around 5 or 6 tons, but placement would be a super important task to get right. If we located the tanks and storage zones badly, we could end up ploughing, or even rolling so badly that we might overcome the self-righting feature designed into the boat. I didn't want to end up in Alan upside down in the middle of an ocean. Obviously, this means not only locating dense, heavy supplies securely and low down, but correctly in both other planes, and not point stressing the fiberglass hull in any one place. Plenty to think about, but the whole point of our float test was complete, and a glorious success. Alan was ready for having his innards drilled, bolted, adhered, insulated, filled out, and made ready for his life of expeditions and hard work. I'll post plenty about these grisly scenes in the next videos in the series. Please ask any questions you may have in the comments, and don't forget to read the description where I also shamelessly plug my Arctic expedition books. So go and buy those now.